Okay, sige, I'll start. So, good afternoon, everyone. Again, this is genetics class. So, parang third part siya. Nakuha natin yung last natin na uh, class, dalawa. So, this one will be our last. So, we'll tackle first on the non-Mendelian inheritance. This includes your triplet repeat expansion disorders. I hope you will be with me. Parang I'm so tired na kanina pa ako nalauna nagkiklinasi. So, in here, the DNA is so unstable that the size and function of the genes are altered when transferred from parent to child. So, sana you'll still be with me. Your imagination will still be with genetics. And then, bear with me, bear with my voice. Parang wala na. Tomorrow, wala na to. So, do you know him? I know, tanan kita, nakilala iya, di ba? Hello?
Yes po, Doc.
Oo. The famous Albert Einstein. What is Albert Einstein doing in my slides? So, as far as we know, he's the greatest physicist, the genius of all time. But apart from his being so famous and being so genius, is that there is part of him na kakaiba. They're saying that Albert Einstein has this parang problem which we call Asperger syndrome. One of the fragile X, parang uh, sa autism. Part, kind of autism. But kasi his brain was studied, parang sabi nila, when Albert Einstein was born, napansin ng parents niya nga, his head was big. So, as he was growing up, parang it became more bigger. Kaya nga yung hair niya hindi kinakat. Yun yung trivia sa kanya. So, when he died, his brain was studied. Yung parang yun yung malalaki daw yung mga gyri na mga ganyan. So, nung buhay pa siya, it was said that he was manifesting this kind of parang manifestation or symptom na gearing towards Asperger syndrome, parang autism. So, Fragile X syndrome is the most common inherited form of cognitive impairment. This is associated with a array of intellectual and emotional disabilities such as mental retardation, learning problems, autism, and anxiety. This is caused by mutations in the FMR1 gene on XQ27.3, di ba? Galing. Ewan ko nga kung asan yan dyan. Hindi ko nga ma-imagine kung where is it part of our brain, where is part of our genes, di ba? Basta ano ko lang siya, binasa. More than 99% of FMR1 gene mutations are expansion of a CGG. Can you imagine our genes? Parang yung may mga letters na nakalagay na CGG, GGC, parang ganyan siya. The sequence pala yon. Parang may problema siya in the 5' untranslated region of the gene. So this occurs in 1 per 3,600 individuals in the general population. So in normal alleles of FMR1, the number of CGG repeats ranges from 6 to 50. In disease-causing alleles or full mutation, the number of repeats is more than 200. So this is because there is hypermethylation on those with more than 200 CGG repeats. This hypermethylation deactivates the FMR1 promoter, causing a loss of Fragile X mental retardation protein expression. So gusto ko siyang i-imagine ngayon kung ang nangyayari sa loob ng brain kung may mga ganito. But it's so very complicated na parang gusto ko na lang parang gusto ko na lang i-remember si hypermethylation na word. So siya na lang. Kasi ang hirap i-imagine. Because the length of an unstable CGG repeat increases each generation if transmitted by a female, increasing numbers of affected offsprings are usually observed in the later generation of an affected family We call this genetic anticipation. Andyan pa ba kayo? Are you still there?
Yes
Nandito
po.
pa po, Doc.
Okay, sige. Sorry ha, ito yung topic natin. Murag, it's so complicated kung sa relationship pa. Wala tayong magagawa. Go for it. Hindi naman to forever. So, yon. So, an X chromosome affected by Fragile X syndrome has this illustration daw. The cause is a trinucleotide repeat in the FMR1 gene on the X chromosome. So this appears like this, which as a portion of your X chromosome appears fragile and about to break dito. So ganyan pala sila. So the history for this is in 1943, the Fragile X syndrome was discovered by James Borden Martin and Julia Bell. The disease is also known as Martin-Bell syndrome, named after the discovery. In 1969, Herbert Loebs first cited an unusual marker X chromosome in association with mental disability. So in 1970, Frederick Heck coined the term fragile site, and in Brazil and South American countries, it is commonly known as Escalante Syndrome. As far as I have known, there was a classical movie with this kind of title. So the characteristic for this in males, like this, nakakatakot, di ba? So there's gonna narrow face with large jaw, long prominent ears, and macroorchidism. So ganyan siya. So there's also high arch palate, velvet-like skin, hyperextensible finger joints, and flat feet, di ba? So ewan ko kung nakakita na kayo ng ganyan, ako hindi pa. So the characteristics in females, there's mental retardation or more commonly learning disabilities. So may kakaiba talaga sila. So the treatment is drug treatment daw, supportive strategies such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, special education services, and behavioral interventions. In the Philippines, wala pa tayo nito. At, at saka yung OT natin dito sa Philippines parang kukonti pa lang sila. So, according to research, the minocycline is a drug. This inhibits metalloproteinases. This metalloproteinases has influence on dendritic spine development and synaptic stability. This is now ongoing. The research is ongoing. Another is Dermatonic Dystrophy. This is the most common muscular dystrophy syndrome in adults. 1 in 30,000 in the general population. This is the affection of this is in your CTG trinucleotide repeat sequence on chromosome 19q13, di ba? The mapping is so complicated again. Normal CTG is 3 to 30. Affected individuals has more than 45 repeats. So the characteristics of these people or these patients who have this uh, syndrome is progressive muscle atrophy, parang nanggugudti ang iyong muscles, weakness, myotonia, cardiac disturbances, intellectual impairment, cataract, gonadal atrophy, insulin resistance, decreased esophageal and colonic motility, myopathic face. I don't know what is a myopathic face looks like. Infertility in women. So the treatment is medical treatment of the complications kasi may mga cardiac, may insulin na ganyan. So the treatment that is medical. With ongoing studies that offer new hope to patients that focus on the molecular therapeutic strategies such as degradation of the expanded RNA, prevention of aberrant protein binding. Oh my G. I don't know kung may na-retain na yung mind yung mga mapping ngayon. Again, my tip is just focus on the chromosome affected. Yun lang siya. So, genomic imprinting. Imprinting is different expressions of alleles depending on the parent of origin. So, genomic imprinting is an epigenetic process because the genetic changes does not change the DNA sequence. So, uh, under imprinting are this syndrome, the Prader-Willi syndrome. In this, it lacks the expression of paternally inherited imprinted genes on the chromosome 15q11-q13. The prevalence is 1 is in 15,000. Absence of expression of paternally inherited genes in chromosome 15q11.2-q13. So, paternally siya. Tigami na lang niyo, Prader-Willi, PP, paternally. The three mechanisms is paternal microdeletion, which is common, 70%, maternal uniparental daisumi, imprinting defect. So the characteristics are severe neonatal hypotonia, parang weak siya pag newborn siya, hypotonic nga, poor feeding, hyperphagia after the first 6 months to 1 year, development of morbid obesity, short stature, hypogonadism, learning disabilities, behavioral and psychiatric problems. The characteristic dysmorphic features are narrow bifrontal diameter, almond-shaped palpebral features, narrow nasal bridge, thin upper lip with a downturned mouth, small hands and feet, fair hair, hypopigmentation of the eyes and skin relative to the family members. So, na-imagine nyo, ano ba yung ano niya, itsura? Parang ako, masakit niya yung ulo ko pag inimagine. So, yun na lang. So the early diagnosis of PWS, the Prader-Willi syndrome, is important for effective long-term management. So obesity is the major cause of mortality and morbidity. Type 2 DM has been reported in approximately 25% of adults at the mean age of onset at 20 years old. So the treatment is diabetes treatment, growth hormone, speech therapy. Angelman syndrome, lack of expression of maternally. Yung si Prader-Willi is paternal. Si Angelman syndrome maternal. Inherited imprinted genes on chromosome 15q11-q13 between 1 in 10,000 and 1 in 20,000. I have seen one of this page of this syndrome. One patient pa lang yung nakita ko sa Makati Medical Center. This patient does not know how to cry. Yung mga may ganito na syndrome. They always smile, laugh, ganyan. They don't know how to cry. Wala silang sad face. So the mechanism is deletion of the 15q11.2-q13 region, paternal uniparental daisumi, mutation in the imprinting center, mutation in the UBE3A gene. I don't know kung ano si UBE3A gene. Pero parang sabi nila, very important siya doon sa my emotions. So in 5 to 26% of cases, the diagnosis of your Angelman syndrome is purely clinical and without a genetic cause. Usually manifests between 6 months to 2 years as developmental delay and hypotonia. The features is severe mental retardation, absent speech, microcephaly, macrosomia, maxillary hypoplasia, prognathia, neurological problems with a puppet-like gait, ataxia, and epileptic seizures with specific EEG abnormalities. Ito na yung behavioral phenotype. Ito yung sinasabi ko. They always have that happy personality with outbursts of laughter with hand flapping, hyperactivity without aggression, short attention span, excitability, sleeping problems with decreased need to sleep, increased sensitivity to heat, and attraction to and fascination with water. Diba? So the management is speech therapy, anti-epileptic drugs, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. PWS and ES are EP mutations. Diba? So, kawawa naman yung may mga ganito, nag-mutate na, nag-EP mutate pa. So, another is uniparental daisumi. This condition wherein a child inherited both copies of the chromosome pair from the same parent. Kasi dapat, hindi niya na-inherit yung both copies, one half lang. Meron sa tatay, meron sa nanay. But in here, both are being inherited. So the mechanism of UPD is gamete complementation. So the fertilization of a gamete with two copies of a chromosome by a gamete with no copies of the same chromosome. May ganon pala, ano? Your trisomic rescue, the loss of a chromosome from a trisomy zygote. Monosomic rescue, duplication of a chromosome from a monosomic zygote. Doon para sa this occurs during the time mayroon ng formation from the egg and your sperm. So, dito siya nagkakaroon ng problema. There's mitotic error in connection with a Robertsonian or other translocation, isochromosome formation, deletion, and duplication. So, among this is the Silver-Russell syndrome, the incidence of 100,000 live births caused by a maternal uniparental disomy of chromosome 7, characterized by growth retardation in the intrauterine and postnatal periods. So the features is triangular face, prominent forehead, clinodactyly, the incurving, body asymmetry, and early puberty. So the treatment is proper nutrition, hormone replacement, physical therapy, and this is favorable prognosis, as we say. Another is Beckwith-Weidemann syndrome. We had one patient uh, like this in Eastern Visayas Regional Medical Center at EVRMC. The history of the mother of this was, yung buntis siya, the mother was working at a salon, doing this mga hairy band, exposure, meron siyang toxic exposure. So, yung baby niya was diagnosed with this. This is pan-ethnic disorder, 1 in 13,700, inheritance of 2 copies of chromosome 11 from the father. So the characteristics was large for gestational age infants, big babies talaga sila. Neonatal hypoglycemia, large tongue, mid-face hypoplasia omphalocele, visceralomegaly, and gigantism. So these patients has increased risk to develop Wilms tumor and hepatoblastoma. But our patient died at 3 months old. So the management is standard supportive medical and surgical strategies, tumor surveillance, abdominal ultrasound is done quarterly until 8 years of age, your alpha fetoprotein measured every 3 months up to 80 years of age, diba? So parang may lifespan sila. Another is your mitochondrial disorders. This is caused by defects in the oxidative phosphorylation system. The minimum birth prevalence of 13.1 per 100,000 or 1 is per 7,634.48. This exhibits maternal inheritance because sperm mitochondria are generally eliminated from the embryo. So, parang mayroong nag-allergy siya doon, ayaw niya. So, na-eliminate. So, none of the offspring of a male carrying the same mutation will inherit the defective DNA. Heteroplasmy occurs when the cells contain a mixture of normal and mutant mitochondria. So, si mitochondria ang affected. The chromosomal anomalies are the common causes of birth defects. This occurs in one of all live births. The standard way of writing is, according to the device ISCN, is total number of chromosomes, then followed by your sex chromosomes, then description of the variation or abnormality detected. So this is your numerical abnormality known as aneuploidy, such as monosomy, trisomy, polysomy, polyploidy, and mosaicism. Most common cause of aneuploidy is the failure of chromosomes to separate normally during meiosis. So trisomy is the presence of additional chromosome, and most common form of aneuploidy commonly arise from weak non-disjunction. So the risk of non-disjunction increases with maternal age as aging breaks down the chiasmata that keeps the chromosomes aligned and faulty meiotic recombination. So, kung sino pa nga din ko no anak, you should not remember, ayun ako nagpaabot ng 40 kasi maternal age is a big factor, di ba? So, trisomy 16, most common aneuploidy in humans. Trisomy 13, 18, 21, not fatal. So, trisomy 21 or Down syndrome, named after John Langdon Down in 1866. This is the most common autosomal chromosomal abnormality, autosomal chromosomal abnormality known in humans. I know all of you already had seen a Down syndrome patient. Di ba ang cute nila? 1 in 800 live births. Common is maternal non-disjunction, and this arise from meiosis 1 and translocations which occurs in 1 to 2%. Are we still there? Okay pa tayo?
Yes
Okay
po,
na?
Doc.
Yes,
Yes.
Doc.
Yes po
The
daw.
characteristics of these patients, as I have said, I know you have seen already one, upslanting of the palpebral fissures, flat nasal bridge, small ears with folded superior helices, flat facial profile, flattened occiput, short neck, redundant skin folds in the neck area. Pero ang cute nila, trisomy 18 grows before to 9,000 live births. Second most common chromosomal abnormality, 90% of cases are caused by maternal Nash junction effect. So the characteristic is that features, small nose, small ears with spastic helices, small chin, micrognathia. The second, fifth digit overs the third and fourth digit. Nag-overlap sila. Majority is congenital heart defects and there is omphalocele. We have one of these, anak siya ng co-resident ko dati. Pero up to now, closely ano lang siya, followed up by his geneticist and pediatrician, okay pa naman yung bata. So there's also radial aplasia, diaphragmatic hernia. Most of them die within the first several weeks of life with a median survival of 5 days. Pero yung iba nasusurvive kagaya nung anak ng co-resident ko, but with severe mental retardation. Yun siya, for those who survives. Trisomy 13 or Patherville Syndrome occurs in 1 per 5,000 to 1 in 10,000 live births. The characteristics of this is holoprosencephaly. So, pag ultrasound yung brain, ay nako, parang wala. Hypertelorism, cleft lip or palate, cardiac defects, omphalocele, polydactyly, and cutis aplasia. Prognosis is poor, namamatay talaga siya. Na lumalabas yung patient, parang FDU, ganyan, fetal death in utero, and they do not really survive. Monosomy is the presence of only one chromosome in a diploid cell. So autosomal monosomies are almost always incompatible with life. Monosomy of sex chromosomes is compatible with survival, particularly involving the X chromosome. An example of this is your Turner syndrome. Yung Turner syndrome nyo is yung neck nila parang nakaganyan lang. Makikita mo sa baby, wala silang neck. Wala sila parang ito na trunk ng neck, hindi mo makita. Kasi magkadikit na yung head tsaka yung shoulder. Yan yung si Turner. Turner syndrome is 1 in 2,000 to 1 in 5,000 female live births. One of the most commonly found chromosomal abnormality is spontaneous abortions. 60 to 80% are caused by the absence of a paternally derived sex chromosome. So paternally derived naman siya. Characteristic is short stature, webbed neck, broad chest with wide spaced nipples, cubitus valgus, hyperconvex fingernails, usually brought to the clinic due to amenorrhea and short stature. May patient kami nito isa. I have only seen one pa lang gihapon. So, mayroon silang congenital heart defects which includes coarctation of aorta and bicuspid aortic valve. Intelligence is usually normal. Ovarian dysgenesis and infantile uterus leading to the absence of secondary sexual characteristics. The treatment that growth hormone and estrogen replacement therapy and the treatment of medical problems and psychosocial support. So, next is your sex chromosomal polysomes. This includes your XXY or your Klinefelter syndrome, primary cause of hypogonadism in men, 1 in 500 to 1 in 1,000 live births. So, parang common siya. Extra X chromosome is maternally derived in 50% of the cases. So, the characteristics of these patients as they are taller than average, with long arms and legs, gynecomastia, small testes, infertility, and learning disabilities. The treatment is hormone replacement with long-acting testosterone preparation, which should ideally commence at 11 to 12 years of age. Early intervention and diagnosis greatly improves the prognosis of individuals with this condition. 47 XYY karyotype, di ba? Ang galing. Mga common to sila, nakikita ito ng mga patient. 1 in approximately 800 to 1 in approximately 1,000. Non-destruction of paternal meiosis. Hopefully, na-imagine nyo pa rin si mitosis tsaka si meiosis, ha? So, hindi na ako mag-elaborate doon. Characteristics they appear normal but taller than average. IQ reduction of 10 to 15 points. 10 to 15 points ang reduction. Hopefully, wala tayong mga ganito. Dapat lumamang tayo. Walang nag-reduce. Normal fertility, formerly thought to occur in males who are in prison. Ito siguro kuno yung mga pasyente na aggressive masyado na mga males, yung mga killer, may mga, basta yung mga mas favorable nila na nakakagawa sila ng masama. Ito daw, si 47XXY. So, sa structural abnormalities, ito yung mga causes. Deletion, chromosome break and subsequent loss of genetic material. There is a so-called terminal deletion which involves the break involving the chromosome state. There's deletion, two breaks occur and the genetic material is lost. An example of this is your cradle shot syndrome, the French for cry of the cat. Yung mga patient na ito, meron kami one sa EBMC din during my residency training. Kaya mag-residente kayo. You go into residency training kasi it is during those times that you can see these cases. Once you see them, you will never forget them. May patient kami na talaga yung cry niya parang ano lang ng cat. Nga, parang nag-meow lang. So, ganyan. And then, ang diagnose sa kanya is si Dr. Santo. And then, nirefer namin sa Iloilo for geneticist, point of view. So, ganon. So, 1 in 50,000 live births involves the deletion of the short arm of chromosome 5. So, the features of this patient, hindi ko siya makalimutan hanggang ngayon, is hypotonia, microcephaly, round face, hypertelorism, bilateral epicanthal folds, and mental retardation. Under duplication, there is partial trisomy. There is presence of extra genetic material from the same chromosome that is caused by unequal crossing over during meiosis. So this is less frequent. In inversions, there is less common forms of chromosomal rearrangements. Arise when two breaks occur in the same chromosome. Two breaks occur. So, sa same chromosome and the intervening genetic material is reinserted into the original site but in an inverted order. Diba ang galing ni God? May mga ganito. So, isochromosomes have two copies of one arm joined through a single centromere. Andito na si centromere, pumasok na. Forming mirror images of one another but have no copies of the other. This is similar to Turner syndrome but most are lethal. Ring chromosomes, these are deletion of both ends of a chromosome with the ends uniting to form a ring. Parang yung chromosome mag-form na into a ring. These problems may occur during mitosis naman. So, mitosis siya. Most commonly, yung mga problems na mention ko occurs during meiosis. Ito sa mitosis. Occurs during the anaphase. Individuals can appear normal or has mental retardation and congenital anomalies. So, mutations are any change in the nucleotide sequence or arrangement of your DNA. This can produce either gain or loss of a function. Gain of a function are usually dominant disorders such as Charcot-Marie tooth disease, social. Charcot-Marie tooth disease, French siya. Loss of function are seen in recessive disorders and in disorders involving haploinsufficiency. Haplo has haplo, in which 50% of the product is inadequate for normal function. Kasi nga haplo. So the causes are mutagens and then spontaneous mutations. So the genetic test, there are genetic tests being done. The objectives of this test are to diagnose genetic diseases, prenatal, newborn, and carrier screening, identification of future health risks, especially for high-risk families, and then helping couples make reproductive decisions, di ba? Cytogenetics is a study of chromosomes. There are indication for chromosomal analysis, yung mga mayayaman, yung mga rich dyan, basta gusto na nilang magkaanak, they always decide to go for chromosomal analysis. This, the indications are persons with recognizable chromosome syndrome, parang sa family history, patients with multiple congenital anomalies and without a recognizable chromosome syndrome, problems of early growth and development, stillbirth and neonatal death, fertility problems such as infertility and habitual abortion, parang may pabalik-balik na lang na abortion. A known or suspected family history of chromosomal abnormality, neoplasia, and pregnancy in a woman of advanced age, di ba? Molecular genetics, which is very prominent and known ngayon, parang sikat siya, the study of individual genes and their structures aims to unravel the molecular basis of mutations to diagnose and treat genetic disorders. Parang mga 3 years ago pa lang siguro nagkaroon ng residency on molecular genetics. May ganun siya. Sa UP, UP Diliman ata yun siya. Mga geneticist na mga ganyan nga nagsasubspecialty. Pero ngayon, no-offer na nila as residency training. Diba? Kakaiba. So, Southern blotting is standard method used in analyzing DNA structure cleaved by restriction enzymes. Ito na siya yung mga test. It can reveal whether the gene is present and if its structure is normal, and able to detect large molecular defects such as deletions and insertions that are below the sensitivity of chromosome analysis. Northern blot is used in RNA analysis to determine the size and amount of mRNA in a gene and whether a specific transcript is present. Cannot detect minor alterations. Western blotting, used siguro, dati this is used in detecting HIV, di ba? Used to determine a molecular defect and how the encoded protein of that defect produced a particular phenotype. Can be used to obtain information about the size and abundance of a mutant protein. Fluorescence in Cyto hybridization. This is the convergence of classical cytogenetics and molecular technologies. Fluorescent detection of DNA probes hybridized to chromosomal target sequence, and then the chromosomal microarray analysis. Newborn screening is one of the tests used to detect this kind of diseases. In the Philippines, it's already covered by your Republic Act 1988 or your Newborn Screening Act of 2004, mandating that all newborns prior to discharge from the hospital should have this newborn screening done. Another is your stem cell therapy. We have this na dako na here in the Philippines. And then, cord blood banking, wala pa ata. So, gene therapy, wala pa din. So, two properties of your stem cells is your self-renewal and your potency. Self-renewal is the ability of the cell to undergo numerous cycles of cell division while maintaining the undifferentiated state. Your potency is the capacity of the cell to differentiate into specialized cell types, di ba? Si self-renewal at saka si potency. So, the classification of your stem cells is your embryonic, germinal, your somatic progenitor cells and normal tissue renewal, your hematopoietic, and then your induced pluripotent stem cells. The stem cells for therapy are your embryonic and your adult stem cell therapy. So, pwede ka na magpakuha nito, tapos ipapa-freeze mo lang, then